Folks, have you ever had a dream to get something done out in the world and yet you face resistance? This is Laurie's story, and I'm so proud of her because I watched her online the other day. I think it was Instagram or something, but you kind of told the story how this book has been inside you for a long time. And then you started taking these retreats to get it done. But let's jump right into it, Laurie, with the elevated leader.
Yay, I'm so excited. Thank you, Kary.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. You got the book. You just showed it to me pre-show. It looks amazing. Yes. I mean, it looks rich. It looks solid. Let's just talk about the book itself. So when did this idea first come to you?
Probably about 6 years ago. I've been working with leaders for over 20 years on how to create better cultures and create places where people love to come to work. And I've been leading programs where people have been able to transform their leadership and even just find a better balance with their life, of enjoying their life, having a thriving personal life and professional life. I think many times people have a great professional life at the expense of their personal life. And these tools and strategies that I've been teaching have been so impactful for so many leaders. So I finally got around, and you know my journey. It's been a long one. There have been some bumps along the way, but I finally was able to get this all down in the book. And I'm so excited to share these principles, these strategies. They're very practical. They are things that you can read and implement immediately and see results.
That's fantastic. So leadership is one of my passions, and I did a doctorate in it. It's just I love leadership because it's like John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. I mean, if a team is going poorly, like Penn State football, what do? They get rid of the leader right away.
Right.
If a leader's doing well, like Elon Musk, they put in a big bonus. So it's like leadership is everything. And so what kind of got you interested? Like, even from a young girl, was it just, were you leading your neighborhood and things? How did it start?
I would probably, if I had some of my teachers here, they would probably say that they're really surprised at what I do for a living, because I was a super shy kid. I was not the leader always in everything. I certainly did some great things and was involved in things. But really what made me love leadership was one of my first professional jobs. I worked for a credit union and I was the assistant manager. And I was leading 13 people in that role and just really loved it. I loved the people side. I loved creating an environment. I used to create these newsletters for my team, just, for our own internal team to keep them motivated. And that's where I discovered my love for human resources. So I ended up going and taking some classes in HR, eventually moved into the HR department, which subsequently became the vice president of human resources, organizational development, and culture. And that's where the journey began. And, like you, I love leadership because every single industry, people have leaders. The mid-manager,
Yes.
the direct manager has the biggest impact on the employee experience. It's such a great role if we treat it as a professional role. And it can have such great impact in a positive and negative way. And so that's really a lot of this book was born out of, I've witnessed more of the traditional practices of leadership that worked for a long time. But as our society started to evolve, as we now have 5 generations in the workplace, things became more complex. I believe it's never been harder to be a leader than in today's environment. And I noticed that many people lack the skills of leading in the modern environment today. They were really more of that transactional leader. Myself included, I didn't receive any training when I first became a manager. And I think that's most people's experience. And so this book, not only do I share about the evolution of that leadership and why things are different today than they were 20, 30 years ago, I also share the 6 leadership saboteurs, the most common areas that tend to get in the way of people leading effectively. And then the rest of the book is the elevated leader model and a framework, very practical strategies that people can implement to move from busyness, fixing, being in the trenches, to more facilitating, building thriving teams, motivating, engaging their teams so that they can get great results.
You know, I meet people all the time who don't think they're a leader. And yet, I'll tell you what, those of us who've been around a little bit, I'm bald for a reason here, but I can quickly size up if I want to follow someone,
Mhm.
right? Isn't this true? Don't you think everybody in life is saying like, do I want to follow that doctor who's prescribing me things like
Yes.
or diagnosing things? Do I want to follow the police officer who's trying to influence my life? Like I think everyone is really asking, do I is this person worth following?
Yeah. Yeah, and we have, are you influential for
Mm,
people to follow? What kind of energy are you exuding with your team? Are you a more
yes.
reactive leader? Are you a passive leader? This is one of the saboteurs that I talk about because I see this more and more. Leadership is action. It's a privilege, it's a huge responsibility. I discuss that I don't believe everyone is meant to be a leader of people.
Ah,
In our society, we have had this practice for many, many years of promoting people for their technical expertise,
mm,
or their talents, their technical talents. And there is a place for the technical superstars. We certainly need to create paths for them, development paths, but not everyone is meant to be a leader of people. And
well,
so
that's good.
I really believe we need to give people a peek behind the curtain of what leadership is before they get in the role, coach them and help them understand what it takes because you need to have tough conversations. You need to be active every day with connecting with your team and building alignment. And not everybody loves that piece.
Mm.
Not everyone's good at that. There are skills that you can learn, but you really have to have that connection with people and be invested in that on a daily basis to be successful as a leader.
That's good. And I've seen, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever, but there's this quote that says when people leave a job, they don't quit a company, they quit a boss or a leader. Talk about that. I mean, is
Yes,
that has that been your experience with all your different speaking that you do and stuff?
absolutely. And research has shown that at least 50% of the time, people are leaving because of their direct manager. And, Gallup releases their statistics every year on the state of the American workplace and
Mm,
engagement levels. And a few months ago, they released their most recent data. And 31% of employees in the United States are actively engaged in their work. This is at a decade low. So there is a lot of room for improvement. And again, I think, there's certainly, I've experienced in my career some wonderful leaders and some toxic leaders. There's a continuum. And so people are going to leave for the toxic leader. They may stay a little bit for the mediocre leader who's more task focused. But people thrive when they have leaders who are intentional,
mm.
who invest in them, who coach them and develop them. Those are the leaders that I want to help create in our world because I think it can really not only transform teams, but result in organizations.
Who do you think is the ideal reader of this? Because I know that you do a lot of consulting, speaking, coaching. So, as you are out and about, we're on your website right now, but you do serve a lot of different companies. And
Mhm.
so what types of things are you doing? Are I see speaking here. What is your ideal thing if people say, I totally get this, I want to work with Laurie, what would they be booking you for?
Yeah, well, either keynote speeches at conferences where I talk a lot about this evolution and what we need to do as organizations and executive teams to make this shift to the more modern approach. And then also leadership programs. So I have a program called The Elevated Leader, which is just like the book, which
Yeah.
the 7 series deep dive into modern leadership today. And that's ideal for managers, seasoned managers, emerging leaders. The perfect time to learn how to lead is before you become a leader. And
Mm,
again, for most of us, that wasn't the case because most companies, particularly a couple decades ago, didn't really invest in that. I'm seeing many companies get much better at that. So, emerging leaders, I've had many executives go through my programs because, the best executives also know that what worked 20 years ago doesn't work today. and they're consistently looking to elevate their skills. So even at that level, I've had people come in and say, wow, I can get a lot out of this. I can move to be more intentional and more confident in my role. And so if you manage people and you want to consistently be on the cutting edge of what it takes and the skills and strategies that can free up some of your energy and time to focus on what matters to get results, this book, those programs are for you.
That's fantastic. And right on your website, you basically say, look, if people are passionate about leadership, if they are investing in getting clarity, they're going to have less stress and burnout, improve retention, greater productivity, positive conflict resolution, an excited team. I mean, that matters a lot, like, I forget, I saw on Instagram the other day, somebody it was this meme of a guy shoveling water in a lake. Okay, think about how crazy that is. He's shoveling water, and it says, the difference I make in my job. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I felt sad because you see how pointless it
Yes.
is. And don't you think a lot of people feel under bad leadership, like, why am I even here?
I think most people feel that way, unfortunately. And, part of why I wrote this book, certainly for leaders, is to become more effective, more intentional when you're at work. But it's also to create environments where your employees have a sense of well-being in their personal life, in their professional life, where they come and they want to put in that effort and they want to feel that connection. And although a lot of this book is focused on these practical strategies, a bigger intention I have with this is to help leaders move out of this spinning their wheel cycle of constantly being working and busy. I truly believe there's a better way. I'm not saying you can work 20 hours a week, but I promise that when someone goes through these practical tools and they implement them, they can reduce the hours they work and be more intentional with their time, get better results, so they have a more meaningful personal life as well. We move from this age of where what was valued in the workplace was tenure, loyalty, sacrifice,
Sure.
where, people sacrifice their personal life to be able to support their families by working. And that's been a huge shift as the newer generations came into the workplace and they started questioning that model. They had more choices. They didn't have to stay at the same company and they wanted quality of life. I really believe most people want that. They want to feel like they're contributing and they're professionals at work and they're invested. They can use their talents and skills and people are investing in them, but also have time to enjoy their personal life. And so I think this is a huge byproduct of this book is not only will you learn to lead much more effectively, you'll be able to create a more joyful life and be able to create a life outside of work that you love as well.
I like what you say on your benefits because you're basically talking about navigating tough conversations. And I've heard it said we're only one tough conversation away from a breakthrough. I think if people are watching this and they said, yeah, what's that tough conversation I've been avoiding?
Yes.
How is that even tied to leadership?
Oh my goodness. This is one of my favorite parts. And I have a whole chapter in the book about this because I think what most people do as managers, as leaders, is we tend to avoid that tough conversation and it builds up. And in the traditional environment, most of us were taught to make it more of a confrontation. We bring that employee in, we sit them down, we quote the policy and tell them what they're doing wrong. And then we write them up and we make sure we call it disciplinary action, which I'm on a mission to remove that phrase from organizations. It's just so old school and traditional. And in the book, I talk about how you can facilitate these challenging conversations in a respectful way that gets better results. There are a couple of phrases I share in there and strategies for starting off the conversation when you can have it when there's this sweet spot, when it just starts to become a pattern and you're not waiting, that you can shift this and completely turn it around. So this is very important as a leader. I don't think anyone ever wakes up in the morning and says, gosh, I hope I have some people problems today, right? We all don't want to have to deal with it. But the reality is, someone at some point maybe won't perform or will struggle or will need some support. And so I have a guide in here of how to facilitate those where it feels more respectful and it's much more effective than that traditional approach.
Wow. So what do you hope, as people read this, the book's already got several dozen reviews, just came out. It's already an Amazon bestseller. Obviously, it's resonating with people. What do you, if we're chatting in 6 months, or you're saying, "Hey, this is really blown my mind," the response, what do you hope happens?
My hope is that managers will take this, use it as a guide, start implementing these practices. And I would love nothing more than for people to feel like, hey, I've transformed how I'm leading. I'm leading with more confidence, more clarity, more intention. I'm not coming in and just reacting to my day every day.
Mm,
I feel fulfilled in my work again, that maybe I was feeling burnt out before. I feel like I have some more balance in my life. I know not everyone loves that word, but I really think that most of us are looking for the ability to enjoy our personal life. I have 3 children, and I know that's hard. It's not easy to lead. There's a lot of demands on professional working people, especially working women. And so I understand that as a leader, it's not easy to come in and have that job and then go home and have a whole nother second job if you're a parent. And so I would love if people would implement these strategies and say, wow, I feel like I've gained back some of my life. I feel more confident and intentional, and I'm making the impact and having the influence that I've always wanted to in this role. It doesn't feel so heavy anymore. It
mm,
feels like I'm really making a difference and an impact in my team and in my organization.
that's good. Who is a leader that stuck out to you? Because I feel like sometimes, maybe don't say their name, but a bad leader that stuck out to you,
Yeah.
and a good leader, because
Yeah.
sometimes I think we're like, "Oh my gosh, I had such a bad leader, I'm never gonna be like that."
Yes. Well, I absolutely believe that we learn from the positive leaders and the things that people do what not to do. And I've had some really great leaders. I mean, I've had people who just cared about their team and
Mm,
their people. And then, I've definitely had some managers and leaders who perhaps have done things not you should not do. And so I think some of this often comes down to emotional intelligence,
mm,
saying the right things. Like, I want to hear people's ideas. I want people to speak up, and I want them to, feel like they can own their job. And I find this common. This was my experience with a leader, and I found this is very common, that often companies will have these values on a wall that sound very nice, but they're not practiced. They're not operationalized in their companies.
mm,
And it can be the small things you do or don't do every day that chip away at trust and integrity. And so for one particular leader, it was just,
mm,
getting mad, frustrated, and taking that out on the team and not realizing the impact that it had, where people started to shut down. They didn't feel like they had psychological safety, which
mm,
is where you feel you can share your ideas without being reprimanded or there's negative consequences, where you feel like you can speak up and disagree. We want that on our teams. Constructive conflict is not only healthy, it's essential for a healthy and successful team. And I give some strategies in the book around this of how can you build that, because whether you're not intentional about it, or maybe just by nature of your title, sometimes if you're an executive, oftentimes people will just hold back because of that. And so
mm.
you have to be extra intentional about building an environment where people do feel that safety, where they can speak up.
That's good. Yeah, I was under good leaders, bad leaders. One bad leader I was under, I kept giving the metaphor of, if it was 4th quarter and we were in a football game and I had 1 throw, I would not throw the ball to this leader because I
Mm,
do not trust that we would win the game. And I think that's a big test. Like, if something's on the line and you would not go to war, go to battle, go to
yes.
win a game, like, that says a lot, and that erodes at you. And so eventually I left, but, it taught me, Laurie, like, I don't wanna be that person for
Right.
other people,
Yeah.
So I think what I bridged there was the gap of saying what we do and doing what we say.
That's right. And I think these are even small things like following through on what you say you will do.
Mm.
And it's all these micro leadership moments every day that build. We're all human. We all make mistakes, but
Yeah.
it's only up to that mistake. It's, if you promise something to someone, following through or letting them know, hey, I'm not going to be able to get it to you because of this, or
Mm.
not canceling coaching sessions all the time, or not making time for your team. I really think the disengagement we see in organizations, where only 31% of employees are engaged. So that's a huge piece of people are because of the leader. It's because they don't feel inspired to follow someone, because they don't feel like their leader cares about them as a person. Their leader is very reactive and isn't intentional with them. And so if we can start to shift that, and you can be much more intentional with how you're focusing your energy and your focus, because I think we talk a lot about time in organizations. And my belief is are we focusing on the most important things? Are we leveraging our time for the people side, which I call caretaking the culture? This was not valued as much in the traditional environment. Not to say people didn't care about their employees, but it was just very different. You didn't need to do all these things like coach and give regular feedback and create development plans at that level at that time.
Yeah.
But now you have to be successful. So it really takes this active leadership, and we can increase the engagement with our teams if we're building these into how we work and how our leadership practice every day.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, leadership shows up everywhere, but I once knew a pastor who said, I would be an amazing pastor if it wasn't for the people. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But don't you feel like that's true? Like, I'd be an amazing parent if it weren't for kids.
Oh my goodness. Well,
You know?
I just have to comment on the parent thing, because it's not lost on me that a lot of these strategies in leading and coaching and teams and more modern strategies also apply to parenting. And I'll tell you, I really struggle with it. So I can really understand that when you've been conditioned in a certain style,
Sure.
to make those shifts is not easy. And I struggle with that at home. I get into fixing mode and start telling my kids what to do instead of pulling back and facilitating by asking questions and guiding them and coaching. And so you can learn, but to your point of not loving the people.
Yeah.
I do think if it weren't for the people, leadership would be easy. But
Yeah.
it's all about the people, right? And so
That's
a
true.
good litmus test is, if you really don't love working with people, if you don't enjoy that, if that takes tons of energy from you, then maybe you shouldn't be a leader. Not to say that we all love doing it every day, all day, but if you truly feel like this is taking so much energy and effort, and it's really draining me and I'm not feeling fulfilled by it at all. I mean, I do think these strategies can help with that, but we have to really look inside and think, is this the right path for me? Or is there another path that makes sense?
That's right. That's right. So, folks, the book is right here. Check it out. It's on Amazon. But Laurie I think the book's just the beginning. We teach that all the time, that like the book is a great place to start. It's super easy, inexpensive. It's a great place to start. And Laurie, I know there's going to be people who say, well, gee, I want my team to have more confidence. I want them to, have better coaching, accountability, and I love that, and difficult conversations. This is fantastic. And I know you had to lead yourself. Maybe we'll land the plane with this. You had to lead yourself when you started to say, I don't know if I'm going to get this book done, because you had a different publisher in the beginning who, they didn't ask your permission to fail or go bankrupt. But, so many times we could have used that as an excuse.
Yes.
But you pushed through, you led yourself successfully. What did it take? It took a difficult conversation saying, I need time.
Yep. It was, I mean, my journey started 6 years ago, and there's been some challenges along the way. So when I first started this book, it was a few months before COVID. And then when COVID happened, I mean, I was worried mostly about getting my kids on 3 different Zoom calls and
Yes.
passwords and all of that. And so that was tough. And so it just paused. It paused for a while. And then I was with a different publisher, and you just mentioned that this is a little over 2 years ago. That publisher went bankrupt. And I mean, talk about a challenge. And
Not fair. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was challenging, but I really, at that point, I kind of been spinning my wheels still too, because I was in it and then I was out of it, and I was trying to focus, and I have children and I'm running a full-time business. I wasn't
Yeah.
taking a sabbatical to write. And then I found you, Kary, through a
Wow.
colleague. We connected, and I remember sitting down and talking with my husband and saying, this has kind of been 4 years now, and I'm feeling frustrated. And he said, just go away every month. Every
Wow.
month, go away for 2 or 3 days and write. And I said, this is a huge sacrifice for our family. This is big, because I also travel somewhat for work. And he said, I know you can do it. So that's what I did. And really, it's interesting, because this is a principle I talk about in the book, is productivity sprints, where we are blocking time to focus on our high value items, the most important things. Most people are not doing that. And so I really blocked these productivity sprints for me to go away and every single month to work on this book. And once I did that, I started to build momentum.
Yep.
Outline became better. I created the model. I created the 6 leadership saboteurs, which we now have an assessment, which, by the way, is a bonus. If you buy this book, it's a bonus.
I love it.
So it just started to flow. And so this has been a 6-year journey, and I'm thrilled that it's out in the world now. I know it's going to have a huge impact, and I hope it does for people. So just glad that it's gotten to this point.
That is fantastic. Folks, you got the website, you got the book. Laurie, thank you for leading yourself well, investing in other companies, and just saying yes, because it's easy to find the excuses in the world, but you dug deep, and so proud of you. So you got a good husband too, with the whole setting you free. So congratulations.
Thanks, Kary. And thank you to you and your team. You were so instrumental in helping me get this book out here.
Oh, so proud of you. All right, folks, check it out. We all can get better leaders. Have a great day. We'll see you.
Thank you.